Hello YouTube, this is Baylor Mage again, and we're coming at you with a Holy Relic update. We have done some big upgrades finally. There are some new things this league, so we're going to split this into 4 little categories. First, just a personal update on where my build is. Second, we're going to go over Spectre options and also how to deal with Spectres when you need to change gear or swap out Spectres or any of that stuff, because that's a dangerous endeavor. And then third, your ascendancy changes and different options that you can do, because if you try and copy exactly what I'm doing all the time, it becomes too expensive. And fourth, what you would need to worry about if you change into an actual occultist, because an occultist endgame change is a good option. So with all that said, we're blasting now. We do have occultist pops in the background here. They've been fantastic. So let's jump in game and go through them. All right. So here is my character as it goes. We are at 5.5k life, which is really nice. Anything above 5k feels really good. We also have this pretty much permanent Heart of Flame buff right here from this Zoffgraph, which is absolutely disgustingly gross. Getting the cooldown reduction and skill effect duration here, and mixing it with Rune Graph of the Warp basically gives you a, what is it, 4.5k molten shell style shield at all times. So I essentially have 10,000 life all the time, which is gross. We've gone with 3 Spectres. Our Spectres are just the Turtle, the Warlord, and the Zealot. That's the ones that I've gone with right now. We'll go over why in a minute. Otherwise, this is what my build looks like. I managed to get one of these. If you're trying to copy along, please don't copy this. The price of these things went through the roof because they're the ones I'm wearing. But I managed to do an impossible escape combo. Got a really nice jewel in here. But this impossible escape was, I think, 6 div when I bought it. Now it's 25. And this timeless jewel was only like 6 div when I bought it. And now they don't even exist. And when they do pop up, they're 40 or 50 div, just because it's the one I'm wearing. Don't do that. Remember, you can put any jewel here. You can get away with putting jewels here if you want. And you can also put jewels here and use these 2 nodes, and that node's in range. And that gives you like 3 you can pretty easily get to. You cannot use this area. Right. Otherwise, we've finally gone into a double cluster setup. Like I normally have, I have 1 12-pointer, but we do not have the points for 2 12-pointers when we do that. So I have an 8-pointer as well. Plenty of attack and cast speed. Over here, you may notice I have dropped unnatural strength. I've got unnatural strength another way, which is these new gloves. I mentioned these before the league start. These are fantastic, but they do come with one problem, which is that at the beginning of any reflect map, they will not be reflect immune right away until they gain Unholy Might. Minions only have a 25% chance to gain Unholy Might on hit. Now they'll keep it up 100% of the time, but they will one-tap themselves at the beginning of a reflect map. You can solve this one of 2 ways. Don't run reflect. That's one way. I don't like to read map mods. I like to run everything. So the second way is to get yourself a ring with, you actually really only need 45% or more reduced reflect, and then just change your Pantheon to 50. If you can get 95% reduced, they don't die. So don't worry about getting over 50, but you do have to hit something. And just 50% from the Pantheon is not enough. So we did that so that we could replace an ascendancy point, which we got Bitter Heresy. This was a massive damage upgrade. Malediction is amazing. That 10% increased damage taken and 10% reduced damage dealt is fantastic. We don't really care about the crit rate that much at all. 20% increased effect of our curse is great, but the big thing there is Chaotic Might grants 30% of physical as extra chaos. Holy Relic is 100% fizz. We're converting it to chaos, but that's fine. We can get 30% extra as. It's essentially when you include malediction and the curse effect, this node is about 45% more damage. So it's fantastic. However, you might notice, even though I've done that, my damage is only at 15.2 mil in Path of Building. And the reason for that is because I've done upgrades in some weird orders, and I actually don't have my Ammon Bahus yet. I really should have had an Ammon Bahus for a while. I keep forgetting about it and spending my money. There's still 12 div as of recording. I could probably squeeze it out right now, but I will be adding it in soon. You can see we've done some pretty expensive upgrades instead. We're into our Svalin, and I did have a Forbidden Flesh and Flame for Profane Bloom. I went this way because Profane Bloom was exceptionally cheap. I am just going to D&D that guy, and I'm so sorry. It was exceptionally cheap when I bought it. The price has already skyrocketed, so I guess sorry if I contributed to that. Right, so there are a few questions. There are a few questions that are happening that are pretty regular questions. The first thing is, what specters do we use? Is it worth anointing the extra specter? All of that sort of stuff, especially because the Perfect Tiger is way too expensive for most people's budgets. So I'm going to go over what I think the mandatory ones are. I think it's mandatory to have a perfect Warlord and a perfect Guardian Turtle. Those two, solid, locked in. I really like the perfect Pain Artist. All he does is give what is essentially a level 10 Zealotry. It isn't a lot of damage. It's only about 4.5% more damage. So as far as Spectre buffs go, that's pretty minimal. That is slightly more than one single frenzy charge that you could get from a Carnage Chieftain. So a few people have been asking me, why have you taken Death Attunement just to fit that in? The answer was, having Zealotry puts Consecrated Ground down everywhere. Consecrated Ground is a absolute ton of regen. We loved that. It makes all of my minions extra tanky. And then once you change into Bitter Heresy, it is a way to generate pretty reliant profane ground, because we no longer create consecrated ground, but anything we did to create consecrated ground will now become profane ground, and it's relatively reliable. It is probably up on only about a third of my map clearing, but it is up on 95% of the time on any single target when I do need that damage boost. So that's fine. The eventual upgrade to fix that will be to put on a Rational Doctrine. Just any, we don't care about what the implicits are. I will be buying a cheap one. There's no fantastic implicits. You can get a tiny bits of flat life, or tiny bits of minion attack speed, or tiny bits of minion res, or tiny bits of resistances, but they're all pretty low value implicits, so I wouldn't pay a lot extra for them. But you have consecrated ground around you while you are stationary if strength is your highest stat. This is the most important one. We just make sure strength is our highest. If possible, and you have a multi-modded weapon, you can balance stats, and you can have this have even more chance to create profane ground around the place while you are critting. But Zealotry does already cover some of that, so it's less important to balance our attributes and more important to have the strength higher. I would still balance if I could, but I wouldn't spend a whole bunch doing it. Right? Okay, those are our Spectre options. However, there is one big thing that is important with Spectres, which is some people have been losing Spectres. So I had to change Spectres. Changing Spectres is a whole thing. I had to change them on the stream, so we got a little clip of that. We'll put it in here. We're in the precarious position of having to move our expensive raised Spectres. We have to get them out of our gloves and into a new helmet because we're changing gear. So to do this the safest way, we're going to do a few things. We're going to start by just taking off our weapon. I don't want a bone offering it off the floor. I'm going to check my graphs. There are no offering graphs on my build. So there is nothing. There's no detonate dead. There's no corpse removal anywhere. Fantastic. Now I know that. I'm going to desummon my other minions because they're just visual clutter that get in the way. So now I only have specters and no offerings. So now when I take my raised specter gem out, all 3 of them drop on the floor right here in my hideout. Now I cannot leave my hideout. They're on the floor right now. Cannot leave my hideout. But it's okay because I have prepped the gear change that I wanted to do. So I'm going to go ahead, put the new specter into my helmet. Get my new gloves on. This bit you could do later, but I already prepped the whole change, so it's fine. And now my specters have moved, my corpses are still on the floor, my offering is still off. Now I can press my target corpse button and I can see all of them on the floor again. Right? And we can just pick them up again like we never lost them to begin with. And there's my specters back. Ta-da! Now take that back off my bar and I can put my thing back on, summon my other minions back up and stop worrying about it. All right. Welcome back from that clip. Next part, ascendancy choices. So we have a lot of different things. You can see I have given up unnatural strength. I've gone for the glove version. This isn't the only thing you can do. There's a few different options here, and we should be exploring what is cheapest at the time. It is important, I think, for us to upgrade into Bitter Heresy. However, a few things we can do. We can drop Mistress of Sacrifice. You can put a red Nightmare or red Dream. I forget what that jewel's called. One of those two. And you can put it in this slot, and you can tattoo fire resistance on all these nodes. And you can bring yourself pretty close to, and you may have to take these extra 3 points, but you can get full block cap without Mistress of Sacrifice, and you can just do that and keep all these nodes, right? And then you get to have that one. You can also Forbidden Flesh and Flame any 3 of these and just replace it, or you can do the glove option that I did to get your Unholy right back. That one's also great. Or alternatively, what you can do is change into an occultist. Now, how I would go about changing into an occultist is you are obviously going to take Profane Bloom, and you are obviously going to take Void Beacon. Those 2 are mandatory. Void Beacon has always been our highest single target forbidden set, and Profane Bloom has always been our best clear. You get both of them by changing into an occultist. Then what I normally do is go Withering Presence. An extra 60% chaos res makes all of your resistances quite nice. It also gives you nearby hindered enemies deal 15% reduced damage over time, which is pretty good defensively. We do hinder stuff with the suffix on a jewel. One minion's hinder jewel will be enough to make sure everything's hindered all the time. That's great. And then I standardly take Vile Bastion, because there's no other better option. In this instance, I just wouldn't take that, and I would go with Bitter Heresy again. That would be Bitter Heresy. But there are important things we're missing here, right? So you have some options. You can Forbidden Unnatural, right? And then you have to do the same block trick with the jewel down here. Or you can Forbidden Mistress of Sacrifice. Then you don't need to invest in that block chance trick down there, but you do need to use the new gloves to get that conversion again, right? So one of those 2, or in theory, if you wanted to really ball out the whole way, you could get the new gloves so you don't need Unholy Might and fix your block chance down there, and that would let you Forbidden Flesh and Flame Bone Barrier, which the Forbidden set for is the cheapest, but it's the most expensive way to do it, because you have to solve all the other problems on your gear. So those are your options for that. Okay, hopefully I've gone through all of the options that people can take. The reason we've gone through so many different options here, and I normally hate giving people options, but the reason I've gone through all of these different options here is because one, I've done it all these different ways, different times, and two, whichever way I choose to do it in a given league when I'm playing it, that way usually skyrockets. That way usually becomes way more expensive. So you don't want to copy the exact way I've chosen to do it on any given league. So I think we've hit all the important notes, right? I think we've hit all the important things, all the general options that you can have. Good luck to everybody. I hope you do not get outpriced. I'm still having a ball with the build, and I will see everybody next time. Bye-bye.